Hello everybody, this is Mr. Longo, and in this video we are going to graph sine and cosine waves. Now the last video you should have watched would have been the introduction to what all these different parts to the equation mean, what a node line is, what a crest and a trough is, all of these different things that are happening. So I am going to show you one way to do these. Now this way I have found is fairly simple to do. There are multiple other ways to graph sine and cosine waves, but this method that I'm going to show you is the one that I use. So make sure you're paying attention. All right, let's go. So when we're looking at these equations, sometimes it is helpful to list all of our information out that we know just from looking at the graph or for the equation. So we have 3, which is our amplitude. So we have an amplitude of 3 above and 3 below our node line. Our node line is up 1, so it's actually y is equal to 1 is the equation of the node, but it's our vertical shift of up 1. So our crest, meaning the top of the graph, is going to be 3 units above the node, which is 4. And the trough would be 3 units below, so we would have a -2. So watch what I'm going to do with that. We are going to need to have a way of calculating how far above and below we go. So actually, we're going to find our starting point first. And to do that, we use this little setup. So we take just what comes after sine and before our vertical shift, and I will show you why as we go. And what we do is we put it between 0 and 2 pi. Now the reason we're using 0 and 2 pi is because that's what a standard sine or cosine wave is going to have for a period. Now the first thing we're going to do is divide both sides by 4 to get rid of this. So actually all 3 if we include the left and the right at the same time with the middle. And we are going to have 0 is less than or equal to x minus pi over 2, which is less than or equal to pi over 2. Now, once we did that, and we go from 0 to pi over 2, pi over 2 is our period. And if we were to take our period and divide it by 4, that's an interval. So our interval is equal to our period divided by 4. And I'll show you why in just a second. So our period is pi over 2, divide that by 4. So pi over 2 divided by 4 is pi over 8. Okay? Now, going back to our equation, we're going to add pi over 2 to both sides. So this is pi over 2, which is less than or equal to x, which is less than or equal to pi over 2 plus pi over 2 is pi. Now once we get to this location of the equation, this is our start and this is our stop. Okay? So our starting point is going to be pi over 2. Now we always need 5 tick marks for this graph because as we talked in the last video, we have 0, pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and then back to 2 pi when we start repeating itself. We are only going to sketch one cycle. So now we're going to go up by pi over 8. That's what the interval is for. So pi over 2 plus pi over 8 is 5 pi over 8. Add another pi over 8, and we're at 6 pi over 8, which reduces to 3 pi over 4. Add another pi over 8, and that's going to bring us to 7 pi over 8. Add another pi over 8, that's going to bring us to 8 pi over 8, which just reduces to pi. Now, as you can see, we start at pi over 2, we stop at pi. So our y-axis would be somewhere to the left. So that's why I wanted to sketch that out, and it might be helpful to you. And if, you want to just graph the whole thing out first, that's fine too. So now I'm going to go to my node line that we talked about. Now we're going to need to sketch some y-axis tick marks here. And we are going to start with a node of y equals 1. So what I like to do is draw a horizontal line at y equals 1. I am also going to graph a horizontal line at my crest. So 1, 2, 3 above is going to give us a top line or a crest. And then at -2, which is an amplitude of 1, 2, 3 below, we are going to have our trough. Now, two other lines you can do is a vertical line at your start and stop. So we are going to start at pi over 2, and we are going to stop at pi. Now that's just laying all of the groundwork for actually sketching out the graph. So the last thing we have to do is graph what we would know as a positive sine. So remember, sine starts right here on the node line. And if it's positive, we are going to go up. So then that just means we're going to go, our next one will be at pi over 8. And then we're just going to hit all of our marks at the node, the crest, and the trough. And then all we have to do is sketch our wave. And that's it. We are done. That is graphing a sine function. Now, of course, you could do this much quicker if you're not being explained how to do every single step. But that is a really good game plan to make sure that your graph is done accurately. And the vertical and horizontal lines are optional, but they will help you graph a more accurate sine or cosine wave. Okay? So for this one, we have switched to degrees, but the graphing is done the exact same way. So this is a cosine graph this time. So what I would like you to do is press the pause button and see how far you can get on your own. As soon as you're ready, click play, and we'll go. Okay, amplitude is 2. So our node line is going to be y equals a -1, so we were shifted down 1. Our crest is 2 above, so 2 above a -1 is a +1. And our trough is 2 below a -1, so that would give us a -3. Now, moving on to our start and stop and our period and interval. The first thing we're going to do with this, it's already set up for you, and the last one I don't think I do. We just have to do our first step and divide by 9. So if we divide by 9 here, we're going to have 0 is less than or equal to x plus 30 degrees, which is less than or equal to 360 divided by 9 should give us 40. Now, you have to remember this, when you're 0 to something, that is your period. So your period is equal to 40 degrees. And if we were to divide that by 4, our interval is equal to 10. So the last thing we have to do is figure out our start and our stop. So the last thing we have to do here is subtract 30. So this goes from -30, which is less than or equal to x, which is less than or equal to, subtract 30, and we get 10. So we're starting at a -30, and we are stopping at 10. So we have a -30, -20, -10, 0, and 10. And these are all degrees, of course. So the reason why we set that up again is so we can figure out where we should put our y-axis. We want our y-axis at 0. So then again, we're going to need to set up some y tick marks. So we're going to go a couple up and a couple down. And this thing is going from a crest of y equals 1. So if it's helpful to you, you can sketch out that y equals 1. We have a node of y equals a -1. And finally, we have a trough of y equals a -3. Okay, and then If it's helpful to you, you can also do your start and stop. And now all we have to do is go sketch out this wave. Now here's the other thing you have to remember though. Cosine typically starts up high, but since it's negative, cosine is going to start down at the bottom. And then we would just go up to the node, go to the crest, back to the node, back to the trough as we go. And here we go. One cycle of cosine and we are done. Okay? So that is what you need to be paying attention to. Now again, as far as where things start, that is all based on the unit circle. But here we'll just create a little bit of a hint chart for you. You have to remember that when we were talking about the intro, sine of 0 is 0. So sine always starts, if we were to have a crest, a node, and a trough, sine always starts in the middle. If it's a positive sign, it'll start by going up. If it's a negative sign, it'll start by going down. Now, if you were to go back to the unit circle again, you would remember that cosine of 0 is 1. So cosine is going to start at either the top or the bottom. So a positive cosine starts at the top. A negative cosine starts at the bottom. Okay, and then this would go up from here, and this one would go down from there. So that's just a little trick, you know, if you're not thinking about what the unit circle looks like. Now, for this last example, I left out the equation you need to solve at the bottom. That's for you to practice setting up. But again, pause the video, try to graph this sine wave, and we'll see how you did. So the amplitude you should have listed is 4, and our node line would be y equals a -2. Your crest is 4 above -2, so that's y equals 2. And your trough is 4 below a -2, so that would be y is equal to a -6. Now I wanted you to practice setting this up. We go from 0 is less than or equal to just this part, which is our pi over 5 times theta minus 3, which is less than or equal to 2 pi. Now how did I know to go with 2 pi instead of 360? And that's because, first of all, there's no degree symbol on the 3. Second of all, we have a pi in our b value. Okay? So now we have to divide both sides by pi over 5, which is multiplying by the reciprocal. So that's just going to give us 0 is less than or equal to theta minus 3, which is less than or equal to 2 pi times 5 over pi is 10. So remember, this right here is our period. So our period is equal to 10. Divide that by 4, and our interval is equal to 2.5. Last step, add 3 to all sides. We have 3 is less than or equal to theta, which is less than or equal to 13. Okay? So once we get to that, we can start laying out our x-axis. That's going to start at 3, and we're going to go up by 2.5. So that's going to give us a 5.5 here. Go up by 2.5 again, and we're going to be at 8, 10.5, and 13. So we're going to want to put our y-axis somewhere over here to the left side, so it's easy for us to work with. And again, we're going to need to sketch up a little bit, and we're going to need to sketch all the way down till we get to a -6. And then you can lay out all of your groundwork if that's helpful to you. So we're going to have a crest at a +2. We are going to have a node at a -2. And we're going to have a trough of a -6. Now remember, the amplitude is just how far you are from the node to the top or the node to the bottom. That's why our amplitude is 4. I understand the total height is 8. Just like in the others, the total height is double your amplitude. Okay? So again, this is a negative sign. If it's helpful, you have your start, You have your stop. Sine always starts on the node, but if it's negative, it's going to go down first, and then we're back to the node, up to the crest, back to the node. You will never go straight from the bottom to the top. You will always need to pass through the node line first. And there you go. So if you got that, you are good to go. All right, that's graphing sine and cosine waves. This is Longo, and I'm out. See you, bye.